This meeting is being recorded.
All right, so welcome everybody. Today we're having a Kate Floss Mother's Day special. The Honourable Kate Floss, the leader of the Maori Pian tribe, and we're looking for people that want to rejoin the New Zealand Maori and the Anglo people, especially the Germanic people that came on the ship of the St. Pauli in 1843 and the ship of Skios. Now, these two ships are significant to New Zealand, and we have got evidence that Chief Nene, and his name was Tamati Waka Nene. And here is, I'll just show a picture of him. It's a Mother's Day special today, and we're going to be telling you some interesting things for Mother's Day. And but we'll get to that in a minute. But today we're going to introduce one of the characters. Here is Tamati Wakanene. Now, Tamati Wakanene worked extensively with Queen Victoria and with the British, and he's been given a really bad name. The people, unfortunately, today in New Zealand, the people that had held many New Zealand Maori tribes in slavery were slaughtering many of them. It doesn't matter which family you come from, which side you come from. What you're going to see in our history is that there was a lot of fighting. There were two sets of tribe, one set of tribe with the missionaries, one set with the British Queen. They were all fighting amongst themselves. There's no shame in any of those groups. If you're from those families, there's just no shame to be had. What you're going to see as you go through is that as they started to, the fighting started to dwindle down, and they all realized that they wanted, now this is the Mother's Day special, they all realized that they wanted a better life for their future generations. And they all just stopped and said, you know what, we're going to stop and have a cup of tea, and we don't want this to happen to our future generations. And it was like they had a moment of clarity. They said, we don't want our future generations to live like this. What can we do? And they turned to Tamati Nene, who held a very important meeting, which we're going to talk about later today for the Mother's Day meeting. But they turned to Tamati Wakanene, and they also turned to Queen Victoria, who I haven't got a picture of her today, but they turned to Queen Victoria. Now, so what has happened is now in, can you see him? Okay, where you can see him. All right, what has happened now is that some of the people, not all, some of the people from those earlier tribes that were fighting against the British, they've turned around and called anybody that supported the British Kupapa, the Kupapa, and they have just absolutely desecrated, denigrated, and demeaned the amazing work that people like Tamati Wakanene did to bring this country together so that future generations could live in peace. Now, my family from the St. Pauli, we're all a part of that. Now, we're going to show today one of the things to show you why we need these people to come back together and stand together with the descendants of Tamati Wakanene and the descendants of the people of the St. Pauli ship, which were my family from the Germanic tribes that came over. And it was my family that covered the lands with lime. Nothing could grow in the South Island and all over. Nothing was growing because there was no lime in the soil, because it hadn't had the first plant. And soil apparently needs to have lime and phosphate, I think, put on it, and then it needs to be planted first with a first crop before the land becomes good, viable topsoil. Apparently, New Zealand didn't have good topsoil. And so my family, and mostly my family actually, had been asked, when they came to New Zealand, they had been asked to stay. Everyone was running and going to Australia, and they have been asked by Tamati Wakanene to stay and help to fertilise the lands and create a better environment so that they could grow food and things. There's quite a big story, but that's not the story today. But today we're going to do a Mother's Day special. So I want to show you what we're fighting against, so everybody knows what we're going to be fighting against. So I'll go to the share screen today, and we're going to be looking at this. Once again, we're looking at the New Zealand Bill of Rights. I'm just talking to Mary, and Mary said she didn't know what KII was. Okay, so can you all? Is that clear to see there, Maxine?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to show you what we're fighting against for our future generations, and why it's important that we all stand together and fight against these things right now. I've got the wrong one on here, haven't I? Can you see the 1990 Bill of Rights?
No.
You've got the Maori pens, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'll stop share
Yeah.
and I'll re-share. All right, hang on. I'll stop share and then I'll go to Windows and I'll reshare. That's better, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're showing you what you're fighting up against and how we need to protect our children. And so if you go to, and we're going to be doing a little bit of work today too. If you go to section 19 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, you're going to see here that it is first of all, I'll go to the top here. On the New Zealand Bill of Rights here, it's going to tell you in the short title who this Bill of Rights is for, all right? And what you're going to see here is that it's not for you. It says here that this Bill of Rights is to promote human rights, which is the United Nations, and it is workers' rights when they come into our country so that they can work. When you've got a lot of immigrants coming in, the criteria to bring in foreign workers into your country is to have a rights set up for them, that if they're treated badly or they're not being paid, that they've got somewhere to turn. And that goes to the administrative court, and this is called an ordinary law. And that's what this is. This is not for you, okay? And it's for the fundamental freedoms. These are freedoms, workers' rights, and all of that. And it tells you who is this for. And it is for New Zealand's commitment to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That's what it's for. Now, on this, it's got a thing called the justified limitations. Now, all the Health Act has been incorporated into New Zealand through this justified limitations. If they, in our proper 1688 Bill of Rights, justified limitations can't be applied. They can't use it. So they've gone through here, and this is why they want you to use this, because under the 1990 Bill of Rights, they have a lot of power over you and your families. Now, you have to be careful, because under section 19, where it says freedom from discrimination, you might think that that's all very lovely, but when you go, you'll see that it's attached to the Human Rights Act. When you click on to the Human Rights Act here, all right, and I want you to go to section 5. Now, if you click on to section 5, and what you'll see here is that you'll see on section 2, you'll see it says New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. And then this is bound to the United Nations, all right? Now, it's quite more complicated if you want to really research it and really know what it says. Functions, if you go to the substitution that was put in on January 1st, 2002. See, if you have a look in here, there's no headings and there's nobody to be responsible, right? But if you go down here, these are all the amendments down at the bottom here. These were all instituted in 2002. Now, I don't do this, it's not really what I'm doing today, but I'll just do it a wee bit. So, you know, if you go to section 5 here, to the amendments, what you're going to see is all of the what you're going to see is they've put headings to the to who is the people that are going to be responsible. So powers relating to declaratory judgments, and this gives them power. This was just, I'm not going to talk about this because it's so complicated, but if you're a law, if you have an interest in the law a little bit like I do, then you can go and look at it. But the powers relating to declaratory judgments, that was just passed into legislation in 2019, and we're fighting against that now. The commission determines the general, this is a foreign commission. This is not done by your elected parliament. It's done by the United Nations Human Rights Commission and not done by your elected parliament. So the membership of the commission, which these are the members of the people that are going to govern over you, which has got the Chief Commissioner, the Race Relations Commissioner, the Equal Employment Commissioner. None of these commissioners are voted in by you. They're not like the Prime Minister. When the Prime Minister does something wrong, you can take it to court. But all of these here, you don't have power over them because they're not actually bound to you. You're bound to them. See, the Parliament is bound to you, and they have to do what the will of the people. But these ones here, you are bound to them. And so you don't get to even vote these people in. So you don't have any say whatsoever. Alternate commissioners, they get to choose who the alternates are, not you. These are their meetings. The meetings that they're going to have, you're not privy to them. You have no business. They can invite 5 people from the Maori group, 5 people from the Anglo group, 5 people from the Islander group, which I don't even know why the Islanders are in there, but they can, 5 people from the refugee group, and then they can make decisions about what they're going to force you to follow based on what those 5 people of each group decide. You've got no say in it. The criteria for the appointment, you can go and have a look. It says different aspects of matters. I mean, it's very ambiguous. It can change according to how they want. Further criteria for their appointments, race relations, functions, all of these functionaries. Now, I want all of you, so this is all new, just instituted. So this is similar to another parliament set up next to your parliament. You have to understand what a functionary is. Functionary is an extremely important word. Governor Hobson was a functionary. A functionary is when a foreign power comes into your country and they set up government according to the system that they want to have in your country. That was what originally the Queen did. They sent Hobson and he set up all of the things. He set up the Parliament, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, set it all up. And when he had it all, they handed you a constitution and they said, there, now you go and run it yourself. So that's how they did it. But this one here, they ain't going to be doing that. These ones here are here to stay. And I'm going to show you why. So usually you don't click on there. If you don't click on there, you won't know about it. All right, because it's hidden up the top there. But actually, so I'll just show you again. So you come into the Human Rights Act, you go to section 5, functions of the commission. If you want to go to the hairy bit at the top there, then you can. But if you don't want to, you can go down here. Here's your Bill of Rights. So this is the deception here, because you see here, they're not saying about any of this governance system that's going to be governing over you. They haven't got it. They have added the Treaty of Waitangi, which should never, the Treaty of Waitangi is sacred. It should never, ever, ever, ever be put into international control, such as the United Nations. It should never. It's a sacred document to our country. It's just so sacred. shouldn't be there. So they put it in here, and then I want you to have a look here and go down to, you'll see here, KI, it says KI, so they have to report, this says they only have to report to the Prime Minister. But what are they reporting to the Prime Minister on? They're reporting to the Prime Minister on the desirability of New Zealand becoming bound by any international instrument on human rights. Right? So, Mary, do you have any comments on what that means? And let me see if you understand what it means. Hello?
Fake. Fake. No.
Do you know what it means? Do you
No.
see what it means when you read it? What does it mean to you? Try and
Desirability of New Zealand becoming bound by any international instrument on human rights. So being bound to the UN.
to any
Any foreign.
An instrument is the body. So the Queen, there aren't many instruments. The Queen is an instrument where we rest our constitutions and things and lands and guarantees on the Queen, so that if we have problems with governments or stuff, we go to the Queen. There are instruments that run our countries in the international circles.
Yeah.
We are in the domestic. We're just taking care of our kids, doing our jobs, got local council, and then we have our elections for the parliament, right? But you have people that have to function in the international community. This is where they talk about our maritime law, our our shipping lanes, our air space, all of that. We need people to, that it's above what we can manage as people, right? But when they say that they will make us bound to any international instrument on human rights, that means whenever they write a law, any law that they want, you are bound to follow it. Do you see?
And they're lies.
And presently they can't do that. Okay?
We're bound to follow their lies.
Power.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So they can say to you, oh, we're going to confiscate your land because under human rights, that land belongs to everybody. And we've got they can say to you, we've got an overpopulation over here in India, they're overpopulated. And over here in your country, you've got lots of spare land. We're going to move all these people and we're going to plant them on your land because it's their human right to have a house on your land, and you have to pay for it, and you won't be able to do anything about it.
And they're doing it.
And they're doing it. That's what they're doing. Yes, they are doing it now. You see? So this is what we're fighting against, Mary. Sharon's here, but Sharon knows. So this is what we're fighting against. So that's enough of that. Now I'm going to tell you the wonderful things that I want to show you what our ancestors did together. Okay? So now I'll turn that off. And I'm going to go to, if I stop my share. So what I'm going to be talking about today is that a ship came to New Zealand from Germany it was called the St. Pauli, and the St. Pauli, they were the first Germans. What had happened was
they were the what? The first Germans?
They were the first German, because what had happened was the missionaries and so there was one group of Maori fighting with the missionaries. Right?
When did those Germans come? Because my ancestor, I'm German too, but my koro came in the early 1820s.
I really want to talk to you about that. won't talk about it today, but I
All good.
know
Another
that
time.
there were Germans pre-1843.
Yeah,
Because
he
I've
came like
seen the
1822,
gravestone.
my koro.
We might have been, well, I don't know. I've got 1843,
Okay.
but 1842, 1843, called the St. Pauli, right? And what had happened was the New Zealand company, the treaty had been signed, everything had been signed, and the New Zealand company of the Chatham Islands, they had agreed with the Queen that the Chatham Islands was going to be reserved for a German settlement. And yes, and all the Chatham Islands and all its surrounding islands were to be for a German Lutheran settlement. And I'm not going to go into the biblical side of it just now, because today I'm just going to show documents, but there's quite a story here, isn't there, Maxine? Maxine knows about it, but it's very, very, very biblical. But I'm only doing documents today, so because we don't want it to be too long, about an hour we want to have it. Now, the Majesty did a new deal with the missionaries, and they realized that the missionaries owned quite a lot of land and the Queen had confiscated it all, and it looks to me like the missionaries and the Majesty did a dirty on the New Zealand company. I think all the history has been lied about, and I think New Zealand company were the saviors, and the New Zealand company are the ones that brought in all of the schools, the hospitals, the building materials, the electricity. The New Zealand company were the ones that managed all of that. And the Queen had made an agreement with the New Zealand company about to do with a lot of the lands. And then when the New Zealand company was here, it looks like the Majesty's group reneged and teamed up with the missionaries against the Maori. And then what had happened was the Chatham Islands got confiscated by the Queen from the New Zealand company, and then the New Zealand company did a dirty on the Germans. They had already negotiated and sold it to the German company, and they let the sale go through, even though they knew that Queen Victoria had said that the Chatham Islands was not going to be included in a settlement place, and all the Maori were kept in slavery for another 50 years or something, 50 or 60 years. So the St. Pauli, this happened mid sailing, and the St. Pauli, the reason that the New Zealand company had to start bringing in Germans was that the Germans couldn't speak English, and they didn't know about this Maori war, this big war that was going on in New Zealand. They didn't know about it. And so they were tricked, and they came to New Zealand, and when they arrived in New Zealand, they were told, oops, the Chatham Islands is gone, you're not allowed to live there, and they were given a barren area of land. And for the Warai Wharau, they were involved with that, and there was and their ship's captain just dumped them, and they couldn't go back to Germany, and there was nothing to do. And Tamati Wakanene, I think, but we're still researching, but I think some of the Germans from the St. Pauli teamed up with him, and they fought against the missionary and their crowd of Maori that were fighting against the English crowd of Maori that wanted the Queen to come in. They're all fighting. There's all this fighting. There's no shame here, because this is the history of New Zealand. They're all fighting, and my family, the Sixtus family, were 5 brothers, and they were 20 years old, 18 years old, 16 years old, 14 years old, and 12 years old. and the 3 younger ones were listed as laborers, meaning that they were white child slaves, right? And they, because of their position, the New Zealand Maori that were working with the Majesty, they gave land to the people of the St. Pauli ship in compensation, but they still had to pay for it. And the money that they had to pay for it in labour, so I've got pictures of them labouring, the money that they paid in labour went to Tamati Nene's group, who were fighting against Te Raupara and all of those, to pay for their wars, to help them. Because got to remember that one group of Maori were being decapitated and having their lands taken, and they were put into slavery by another groups of Maori. So there's a lot of fighting going on. Actually, the fighting was between the Maori, nothing to do with the Anglo people at all. They were all fighting. And then each of those groups got different groups of Anglo people on their side. So my family was on the side of Tamati Wakanene. So that's why he's my champion, right? So, in the end, they all, before we do this, I'm going to go to my family, and then we're going to go to Tamati Wakanene. Then we're going to go to my family again, the St. Pauli. Then we're going to go to a huge conference. So just hang on while I'm going to show you documents. So the first document here, can you see my document or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So can you see that? Right. So this document was called Victoriae number 2. There must be a Victoriae number 1. And this was done in 1844. The first Victoriae, I don't know where number 1 is, and I don't even know what it is. I'm going to be hunting for it, but I think it will be an important document. So this was after the treaty was signed, and this was an ordinance of the naturalization of certain, not all. It was mostly given, all the ones on here were the St. Pauli, and because nobody, they had lost so much, they had been cheated really, and they were not able to go back to their country, and they never got that. They paid £10,000 for the Chatham Islands, which would have been a huge amount of money in those days, and they lost it all. They never got that money back. And so in return, to protect them, Queen Victoria made them subjects to give them the protection of the Majesty, and they were the first ones in New Zealand who were not British people that went and made themselves subjects of the Majesty for protection. And it says, whereas certain Germans, being the persons particularly described in the schedule to this ordinance annex, have recently settled in this colony, and Her Majesty has been graciously pleased to assent to the removal from them within this colony of the disabilities to which aliens are by law subject. This meant that usually when people came into New Zealand, they were aliens in New Zealand. The New Zealand Maori were not, of course. It was your country. But anybody that came in was a foreigner and an alien, and they weren't able to get a piece of land or anything like that, and they weren't entitled to any of the protections. And once they got this protection, then they were entitled to be protected by the New Zealand Maori themselves through the whakaputanga and through the treaty, because the New Zealand Maori were the owners of the country, and there's no doubt about that. And so this gave them that. Be it therefore enacted by the Governor of New Zealand with the advice and the consent of the Legislative Council thereof as follows. All in singular, the persons are particularly described in the schedule hereunto shall be, to all intents and purposes whatsoever, within the colony of New Zealand, deemed and taken to be and to have been from the 14th day of June. Now, there's an interesting thing happening in June. Maxine, we'll have to look at that. 1,843. Oh, so they did it in June. Oh, so it was ascended to God on the 16th of July, 1844, but the actual date that they went to the court and ascended themselves. Now, you must remember about this ascending. It's very important because all of us are going to be ascending together soon. So that's why I want you to understand this ascending. So they actually ascended to the heavenly realm in June, on the 14th day of June, 1,843, to be natural born subjects of Her Majesty, as if they had respectively been born within the realm of New Zealand. So they became New Zealand nationals at that moment. All right. So then you can see, I'm not going to show these. I don't know what your German name is, Mary, but these are the people, and we're searching for them, and we're going to bring them together to fight this government, is what we're going to do. Calling all the people of the St. Pauli, please contact Kate Floss, and we intend to ascend just as they did in 1844. We intend to ascend to the court again. That's what we're going to do. Now, you'll go down here and you'll see here, where's mine? Mine is here. Sixtus Carl Christ. Christ Sixtus is a printer. And then Christ Andre Sixtus is agriculture. And Wilhelm Sixtus was agricultural labourer. And Gottfried George was an agricultural labourer. And is there one? There's one missing. Oh, no, he's here. Sixtus, Fred Andre. He ended up a Smith. How did that happen? Sixtus. Well, that's strange. And so the five brothers ascended. And then from that moment on, they became subjects of the Majesty and protected by the 1688 Bill of Rights that you all hear me speaking about. And so if anybody hurt them or anybody stopped them from speaking, they could ascend and they would get protected by the Queen herself. Now, that was done in 1844, okay? After that comes our star, Chief Nene. He followed my family. This is incredible. This is incredible news. He followed my family. And you'll see, can you see this document here? And you'll see here, I want you to remember this number, Victoriae 11. And it's got Victoriae number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure about these numbers up to number 16, but remember the Victoriae 11, because we know that there's something going on with these numbers. We haven't quite figured it out completely, but we're working on it, and it's biblical. I'll tell you that much right now. Now, if you go down here, you will see here naturalization, and Thomas Wakanene became naturalized, the same as my family, and he became a naturalized British subject, and he became a subject of Her Majesty the Queen. He was the first New Zealand Maori, I think, the first one ever to do it. This is, I don't know why they hide his name. So Tamati Wakanene is precious, and every single marae in New Zealand should have a picture of Tamati Wakanene on there, okay? So he's bowing to the Queen over there. So, so then, Tamati Wakanene was naturalised under Victoria 11. Now, we're going to go to next. For some reason, I don't really know, but in 1852, so these two people, the people from the St. Pauli and Tamati Wakanene, only these two, from my knowledge, ascended to be official subjects of Queen Victoria, all right? And they were the first. They were. And we're going to be the last too. And if you look here, in 1852, the Constitution came into New Zealand, and then you'll see here in 1858, we went and did it again in a New Zealand, a proper New Zealand court. So the one that the St. Pauli people and Tamati Wakanene did, this was done before courts had been established completely in New Zealand. But it was after the 1852 Constitution was proclamated that that they had proper courts in New Zealand, and all the people of the St. Pauli, well, actually not all, only some. So if you're from the St. Pauli, don't miss out, because we are going to ascend again. So don't miss out on getting on this paper with us again, all right? So we're going to try and get us all together, the same people that went there in 1858 or even in 1844, and Tamati Wakanene's descendants as well. It's going to be amazing. Now, so whereas an act made and passed by the General Assembly of New Zealand intitulated the Naturalisation Act, so there was a Naturalisation Act created in 1856, which is 12 years after the St. Pauli's and Tamati ascended to the heavenly realm. So this is amazing. It was amongst other things enacted that all in singular the persons should be declared to come within the operation of the said act by any proclamation to be issued by the governor, should until the termination of the next session of the General Assembly. Has there been another session? That's the question. Be deemed and taken to be within the islands of New Zealand to be natural born subjects of Her Majesty. And whereas the persons particularly described in Schedule marked A and hereunto annexed have from time to time been so declared to come within the operation of the said recited act, and it is expedient that they should be removed from them within the colony of New Zealand the disability of which aliens, they didn't want them to be aliens. Now in America, they're aliens. Be it therefore enacted by the General Assembly. Now this was for Group A, and then the persons who are particularly described in Schedule A to this act annexed shall to all intents and purposes, whatever within the colony, be deemed and taken to be and to have been from the dates set opposite their respective names, natural born subjects of Her Majesty, as if they had been respectively born within the realm of England. So within the realm of England. So we've got a double booty there. We've got New Zealand on one, we've got in the realm of England and another, we've got a double. So then, and whereas the persons hereafter mentioned have settled, and it is expedient that there should be removed from them the disabilities of being aliens. They wanted them to be, you know, proper. So I'm like, I was adopted by you. So I've been adopted, and I'm going to be going to the Waitangi Tribunal and asking for my rightful tribal status to Chief Nene's tribe. I think should be going. And this is for the schedule marked B. Now, when you get to the 1688 Bill of Rights, you're going to see in there A, B. And when you look in mathematics, Aboriginals, the New Zealand Maori used to be called AB Original. AB Original, the A and the B is two groups, or can be many groups in math, and then it's the two circles that come together, and it's A on the left, B on the right, and in the middle it's the A and B coming together. And so when we ascended to the heavenly realm, we ascended as an A and we ascended as a B. And so we became AB Originals just like you. So we are the Aboriginals of New Zealand too, in Kate Floss's mind. Right, so this is so exciting when you see it all. And whereas there may from time to time be other persons resident within the colony whom it may be expedient to relieve before the next session of the General Assembly from the disabilities of which they are aliens by their law, by law subject. Be it therefore enacted that every person who shall be declared to come within the operation of this Act by any proclamation to be issued in that behalf by His Excellency the Governor shall from time to time be deemed and taken until the termination of the next session of the General Assembly, be and have been from such specified time a natural born subject of Her Majesty within the colony of New Zealand, as fully to all intents and purposes as if his name had been inserted in the schedule. So this one is giving it. So my family got A and B. I'm in B, all right? The other family got A. They got A, we got B because we were the slaves. So I think we got B because we were the child slaves. And then the third one said that all people that came to New Zealand would be protected under the 1688 Bill of Rights, all right? So you've got my family that went first. Then we've got Nene, and then my family with the St. Pauli. The St. Pauli went next, and then all the Pākehā that came to the shores at that time became protected as subjects under the Majesty of the Queen if they went to, well, they didn't even have to ascend. We ascended for them, all right? So we went and ascended for them. And so if you see here, on Schedule A, you'll just see a bunch of the Bensimons here. They were in Schedule A, and these are the Jordans. And in Schedule A was Wilhelm Sixtus and Christian, and his wife. So they went in A, and strangely, who went in Schedule B? Hang on. Schedule B was hello? Oh, no, I'm busy. Sonyo. That's the, all right. Where's my ones? Can't see them. Here we go. Christian Sixtus here, and Louis Sixtus, and the Sixtus children. So John Christian Sixtus, who is my father is John, and his grandfather is Christian. So these are my family here. And where's the other Sixtuses? They didn't all ascend, I don't think. So only a few. Anyway, I'll go out of that. So that's my one there. Here. All right. So only two of the the other sextuses were children. Oh no, they wouldn't have been. I don't know. But anyway, two of the sextuses ascended. Right. I've got a bit lost there. Right. After that, there was a big conference called after that, there was a big conference. And, oh, no, not there. And in this conference, I did have it open, but I've lost it. Right, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. Here. Right, so after, can you see this page? The Kohimarama conference?
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, right there. So this is called, so everyone can remember. All right, we'll just go and show you. So if you see there, we had the first Victoriae, which was number 2. That was 1844. And then we had Tamati Wakanene. And look at this Victoriae 11. This is going to be very important. And then he was naturalized and became a British subject. And then we had the naturalization here, which we became both British subjects and New Zealand subjects. We got both, all right? And then they made it for everybody, but the New Zealand Maori still, only Nene had ascended. So the others had not ascended, okay? And then they had a big conference, and that was called the Kohimarama Conference in 1860. And this is where we want to talk about the beauty of our history of New Zealand. During this conference, you'll see all the chiefs on here. All of them are there. Every single chief, it didn't matter which tribe you were from. Didn't matter if you were from, you'll see here on the names, I'm not going to read it. You can go and research this yourself. Me and Maxine and Sharon, we've read a little bit of it together, but you'll see there's a big one coming. I'm not sure if that's Te Waka. It says Te Waka. It might be Tamati Wakanene, I'm not sure. But no, it's not, they're saying, I don't know. But here's a whole bunch of other chiefs. Hopi Hannah, Kingi, there'll be some familiar names on here. And then you'll see Wiramu Hipango, Waka. Then you'll see down here, who else will you see? Timutu and Mohi Kupi. Though I'm always having fights about the Kupi, but Michael King did say there's a Kupi, but he came later. So there's a Mohi Kupi. There's let's see, who have we got here? There's Kahawai Ururangi. Here he is. This is what I was looking for. Tamati Wakanene. And at one point, Tamati Wakanene, he says, I'm not going to speak to you right now. So he comes to speak to them later. But he is the one that organized all of this, all right? And then you'll go down here and you'll see Taruki, Tafifi, hang on. Here you'll see Tamihana Te Raupara. Is that the Te Raupara that was going around killing everyone? And so this just shows you that it had all the Kingitanga tribes that were fighting the British, all the Nene tribes that were fighting the Kingitanga, and they were called Kupapa. And I think it's time that we stop using this word amongst the New Zealand Maori communities, and you stop calling people that work together with the Majesty, you need to stop calling them kupapa. This is an evil word, and you shouldn't use it, because if you know this conference, you'll see that they all joined together at this time they started thinking about their descendants, and they said, we want our descendants to be able to grow in a happy, healthy, peaceful, unified, safe environment. And we don't want our children born into this horror anymore. And so they all joined together. And this is just showing that it's saying that, yes, the Anglo people and the Queen's people were fighting. Yes, all the tribes were fighting. This was just a horrible thing. And it's also showing how over a series of years that our two peoples and the two tribes, the Kingitanga and the tribes that were working with the British and my people, how we all came together in a series of documents to protect our country and protect the borders of our country. And we're going to have to do it again. This is what we need to do again, and we're going to do it, all right? So, and I'm going to show you how. We're going to show you how. So there you can see they were all there. Now, so we'll go back and review. So we've got my family there in 1844. We were the first. Tamati Wakanene in 1847. He was the second one. 1852, the Constitution came. 1858, the AB group, which is my family and the people from the St. Pauli, the AB group, and then in the third section, it was all the Anglo people that were in New Zealand came under those protections. All right, so they did it in stages. They did the most desperate people first, and the people from the St. Pauli were the most desperate people because they were starving, and they were they really were desperate, and the Tamati Wakanene and those tribes were helping them to survive. So they needed protection first. They were first. Tamati Wakanene, his group, was second because they needed protections from Te Raupara and Te Kuti that were going around, all right? Then in 1858, my group went again, and this time they encompassed all of the settlers that had been coming to New Zealand that were in danger. So they all came next, right? Then they had the conference in 1860, and they brought together all the tribes that were warring against each other. All of the tribes were brought out of slavery. The ones that had been put in slavery were brought out of slavery and permitted to go back to their original lands. There were many negotiations going on amongst them. And we haven't read this conference yet, all right? Then after that, in 1865, can you see that, Maxine? In 1865, this is when the New Zealand Maori ascended to the heavenly realm, all right? And it said here, an act to declare that Maoris shall be deemed to be natural-born subjects of Her Majesty, and to declare that the jurisdiction of the Queen's courts of law extends over the persons and properties of all Her Majesty's subjects within the colony. And this included all of us. So she made a special section just only for the New Zealand Maori. And then she brought in all of the people that we had already come before and added us under the Maori. So they put us under your governorship. but you also had a responsibility to govern over us under the Queen's protections. So you see how it went there? And so you were given the obligation, the responsibility to also govern over us and protect us. That was your duty. It wasn't actually our duty to protect you or those people, because it was their country. It was their duty to protect us. And so there's responsibility from all sides here. And the Queen sat at the top to be above all of us and make sure that neither sides were killing each other. So it's a beautiful thing that was going on. So whereas, so they ascended on the 26th. What was I saying about 26? Maxine yesterday. Something to do with 26 was very important. Peter, 26. Here's the 26th. On the 26th of, remember we were iron. And what's the stones called? The stones, Maxine, speak to me. What's the stones called?
Hewn. Non-hewn stone. Hewn stone.
Stones. We're not going to talk about the huge stones right now, but 26 is iron. Here's 26, Maxine. So the 26th of December, 1865, whereas doubts have been raised about certain persons of the Maori race, if they are natural born subjects of Her Majesty, whether Her Majesty's courts have jurisdiction over the property of Maori, be it therefore declared and enacted that by the General Assembly and by the authority thereof as follows. The short title of this act shall be the Native Rights Act, 1865. That every person of the Maori race within the colony of New Zealand, whether born before or since New Zealand became a dependency of Great Britain, shall be taken and deemed to be a natural born subject of Her Majesty to all intents and purposes whatsoever. And he's ordered everyone, the Supreme Court and all other courts of law within the colony ought to have the same jurisdiction in all cases touching the persons and the property, whether real or personal, of the Maori people. He's saying, you stop stealing their land, you Anglo people that are robbing them of their lands and telling them that they've got no rights and all of that. He is telling them all to stand down and their lands are not permitted to be removed from them. Now, I'll explain to you about that in a minute. This is where the judge said their lands are protected and you will not touch them. You're not to, and that he ordered them to stand down because they were taking the lands, the missionaries and everybody were taking the lands because they were saying the New Zealand Maori were not subjects and therefore they didn't get the forfeiture of person of their lands. You didn't come under that protection. That's what they said. So, but they did because of Nene, you see. All Nene's lands were protected because he ascended straight away because he knew. And he had ascended and his lands were protected straight away. And so he had to teach all of them about this. So then this is where the Supreme Court and every police were ordered to stand down and not permitted to confiscate Maori lands anymore. And the Maori custom, and they may under any law for the time being enforced in all cases touching the persons and property of the natural born subjects of Her Majesty. So the Queen has said they're protected under me now, and you dare come along and take their lands, and my Queen's armies are going to come along and they're going to you're going to be in trouble, right? Now, some of those tribes like Te Raupara were continuing to try to take the lands, and the Queen's armies were permitted by this to go in and stop them. So you just have to be a little bit careful. Oftentimes, those Queen's armies were going in, backing up Tamati Wakanene and some of the other tribes that were having their lands taken by the other nastier tribes. Do you see what I mean? So one group of tribes gave the Queen's army permission to go in and take their lands back. And another group of tribes, who are the ones that had stolen the land from one group of tribes, had called them kupapa and were fighting against the Queen's army. So there's a lot more going on here than what you think. All right, now, so in the last section, all right, so this one applied to all of us, but it applied to the New Zealand Maori in 1865. Now we're going to go to the 1688 Bill of Rights, and we're going to show you what this meant to you and what it means to you. We're going to do a roundabout the loop-de-loop to where we started at the Human Rights Act, where it says that they will have all power over you. And so we're going to go to the 1688 Bill of Rights, and it's in the UK and it's also in New Zealand. Everyone knows this because I keep raving on. But what that was talking about was the way that they were able to stop the missionaries and these tribes from taking the lands from the weaker tribes, because not all the tribes were strong. What they were talking about was this here, forfeiture of person. A forfeiture of person before any conviction is illegal and void. And what they said is, if somebody's living on the land and they say it belongs to them, you're not allowed to take that land away from them, like the SNAs. You're not allowed to, SNAs comes up to forfeiture of person without conviction. And that's what the United Nations is doing, is taking land that's coming in due to that law that they've got there in the human rights law. They're just coming in and taking your land. That comes under forfeiture of person without conviction, and they're not actually allowed to do it, right? And the New Zealand Maori, once they got made the subjects of the Queen, they became protected under the forfeiture of person without conviction, and that stopped all the other tribes from going and taking their lands from them and the missionaries. So that is why that's important. But I'll tell you another one that's very important to New Zealand, extremely, extremely important, because this ties into the whakaputanga. You'll see here IAB, all right? The St. Paulies were the first ABs that ascended. We were the test case. The second one to ascend was Tamati Wakanene. He would have been the A. And then the next one was the 1865, after the conference, where everybody became AB. And here's what it says here. As the AB, I do declare that no foreign prince, no foreign person, no foreign prelate, no foreign state, no foreign potentate has or ought to have any jurisdiction or power or superiority or preeminence or authority, ecclesiastical or spiritual, within this realm. So help me God. None of them. The Catholic Church has no power. The United Nations has no power. America has no power. Even England has no power in regards to subordinate laws. They're not even allowed to give us subordinate laws. They only have the power to keep this in place for us, because our families ascended 200 years ago, okay? So we need this because our country is being governed by 60% of Parliament who are not born to New Zealand. The leader, let me show you, we just found it yesterday, the office, what's it called that we did yesterday, Maxine?
The Serious Fraud Office.
Yeah, the Commissioner of Serious Fraud.
Yeah, Serious Fraud Office.
New Zealand, and these top chief executive of the New Zealand Serious Fraud Office is not a New Zealander, not even a Maori, not even an Islander. It is Miss Karen Chang from China, not even born to New Zealand. I'll show you a picture of her. Where is she?
She's very young too.
Karen Chang, and you can look here. Karen, she's very young.
Yeah, she
It's
looks
no
quite young.
wonder.
Not that there's
Why?
anything wrong with any other races, but many of our top positions are being held by immigrants. And it's
Listen,
like,
yes,
why?
they've put this is the classic spy network policy where they shove a pretty, sexy, intelligent woman up front to dazzle the eyes of the males who are ruled by their dicks. That is a fact. They're ruled by their penises. And so what do? They shove up a sexy, hot little lady to rule the Serious Fraud Office. And I bet they put in the lower down positions half a dozen old, white, Anglo New Zealand men that are ruled by their penises. That's what they do. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and look at her. She is one hot potato.
So we would go to the Serious Fraud Office if we had some, they would be the place we would go if we were worried about our country, wouldn't they be?
Well, they would. And I've got a list of around about 10 Chinese nationals that have been in New Zealand Parliament and have had to step down from New Zealand Parliament for doing things wrong in New Zealand Parliament. And they've never, ever, ever been convicted. Because here's the deal. When foreigners come into your Parliament and they have another passport, a First National passport, when they commit crimes, they've got a passport and they can just leave the country. And the law actually says that if you have two passports, you're not allowed to work in Parliament. You're not permitted to. And the reason why you're not permitted to is because you can jump the country when you've done things wrong. Like if you stole everything from the country, then you leave the country and you take all the country's wealth with you. Nobody can stop you. So you're not supposed to work in any New Zealand. And so anybody that is a national, look at her. Oh my gosh, she's gorgeous. She's gorgeous.
So you would go and complain to the Serious Fraud Office, and which is, holds quite a position, but the Serious Fraud Office's budget is only 9 million. So what the hell can they do about any complaints? 9 million a year is their budget.
$9 million a year barely covers their salaries. If you calculate $9 million, and they would be on at least 100,000 a month each. And if you just only calculate, so let's calculate that they've got 10 people, they'd have more than 10, let's say they've got 20 people, and there's like 3 million gone already, just on their salary. Then you can add to that their office expenses and all of that, several million, their heating, their electricity, all of that. there's no money for going to court. There's none. $9 million is their budget, and it's run by Karen Chang, who is not born to New Zealand. No offense to you, Karen Chang, you really are a lovely lady, and I'm proud of you for what you've done. But you know what I'm saying? If in China allows New Zealand people to work in their parliament and their serious fraud office, then you can be in ours. But I don't think you're allowed to do that in China. In China, the law is you have to be born to the country, of parents born to the country, and you have to have a very good ancestry to be able to work in the serious fraud office. I mean, it's the fox in the hen house, isn't it? But anyway, let's get out of there. Get back to the beautiful thing. So what it says here, we're going to be wrapping up in about 10 minutes. What it says here is that no, under our law, that is against our law, and we need to be going to the parliament for it. All right. So we are interested in two laws. We're interested in the forfeiture of person for the SNAs and to stop the land being taken by the United Nations. And we're very interested in the supremacy law, which forbids them to govern over us. And that brings us all the way back to the first one that we had, that takes us all the way back to the Human Rights Act. It takes us all the way back to there, where we're saying in section 5 of KII here, and it takes us all the way back to KII, where they have said that New Zealand will be bound to any international instrument, and that New Zealand will be under the governance. New Zealand will be under the governance of all of these people. New Zealand will be under the governance of the human rights, the Chief Commissioner of the Human Rights, which is Paul Hunt, the Race Relations Commissioner, and various other commissioners. Many commissioners are going to be in there, all chiefs. So New Zealand will be under that kind of governance if we don't ascend as our ancestors on both sides. We've got to join together, and as we need to ascend back to our original law. Now, we've got a lovely little thing here that I'm going to show to you. Sharon, do you mind if I show this? The one that which Sharon is, or Sharon's got a thumb up. All right, thank you, Sharon. So Sharon has been working with me, and we are going to get all the descendants of the original. We're looking for anyone that wants to join. We're looking for anybody that belongs to the ship, the St. Pauli, anyone that was on the ship, the St. Pauli, we're looking for you. Contact Kate Floss, and we're looking for anyone that is descended to Chief Nene and knows the significance of what Chief Nene did for you. We're looking for all of you, and we're going to put our families onto a new declaration here, which we have begun writing it for the court, and we're going to petition the court for a new declaration, exactly the same as what they had, the ones that they had. It's going to be exactly the same, and it's just going to redo it. It's called a reconsolidate. Now, the New Zealand Maori also went again. Oh, I forgot to tell you, in 1908, I forgot to tell you about that. Actually, in 1908, so I'll take down that human rights. And in I'll see if I can get it for you. In 1908, I don't know if I can get this one for you. So I'll try and get, yes, here. See if I can get it. Yes, here. Here's, I actually forgot it. Can you see this one, or which one are you on? Can you see the Native Rights Act? No. Here in, all right, stop share. And then go to share. I forgot. Oh, oops. I forgot. In 1908, in 126, another 26, the New Zealand Maori went to the court again and consolidated their native rights. And we're going to do it again, but this time we're going to have my family, the St. Pauli, and the Nene family, and we're going to take in a couple of other special families. I think we'll take in a family, especially from the Kingitangi, if they want to. Anyone that wants, well, some. We're going to take some. We want our names on it again, just like it was in 1844, 1847, 1858, and 1865 didn't have names, and neither did the 1908. But we're going to get some names, and we're not quite sure how we're going to do it, but we're going to go and consolidate it, that they made every person of the Maori race. So we're just about to wrap up our video now. So we have where's the here? All right. So we have, don't worry about the names here. We've put in Sharon Turner, but we have started preparing. It's not finished yet, but we have started preparing, and we are saying that all of our families, anybody that's on here, they can do a whole New Zealand one later, but for this one, it's going to be for our families. We're going to lead the way. We're going to ascend to the Supreme Court. You don't need to go to the police. You ascend to the Supreme Court. We're going to ask for a declaration, and in our declaration, we are consolidating what our families did in 1844 and 1865 from the conference that they had. We're going to consolidate that, and we're going to say that we do not stand under the 1990 Bill of Bullshit Rights. We're not standing under the human rights. We're not standing under any international laws. We're not standing under any of the health acts, and we're reconsolidating that to confirm our indubitable right under the 1688 Bill of Rights. So that is what we are planning to do. So I've done enough talking, and I'm opening up everybody. I'd be happy if you would turn off your microphones and have discussions and something like that. Opening the floor.
I was going to say something and I forgot what it was. With the going back to ask for the declaration, at one point did we end up being stateless? I'm not sure about that. Did you want to talk about that, or no?
Well, we have thought that I was stateless because in 1975 the New Zealand Maori renounced the Queen through the Waitangi Tribunal and through Peter Sharples when he went to the United Nations, and he put the New Zealand Maori into the United Nations UNDRIP and the He Puapua, and they have declared themselves refugees. And New Zealand Maori are listed as refugees now, as we speak, in their own country. And So I had thought that I was, because now they're taking all the lands back and they're giving all the land back to the New Zealand Maori as refugees so that it can go into the United Nations Indigenous Rights Corporation, where all the lands of all the natives in the world are going under the protections of the United Nations. Because you have to be in an instrument, so you're under the United Nations instrument. And I had thought that I was stateless, which I may be. I don't really know. I may be stateless, and I may have to trace it back to reclaim my Germanic nationality. If I want to have a nationality, I might have to go back and reclaim. Who's calling me? It's not the time. All right. So, can you still see me?
Yeah.
All right. So, but since I've got these documents, and now I realize that I'm protected still under that, whether even my land, if I have land in New Zealand, is protected under the forfeiture of person. And as soon as I renounce the United Nations, that's why I'm going to go to court. I've renounced the United Nations, and I will renounce all their laws, because I don't want to be under those laws. And if the New Zealand Maori want to be under those laws of the United Nations, by all means, go and do that. But not in my little square of, even though I'm not living there, but my family are not going to be placed under all of those laws, because I will protect them. So that's what I'm going to do. And anybody that wants to join me can, or us. Yes.
So we know what we're talking, like we know what we're talking about because we've been on this for so long, and because of you and because of what you've found and your research and stuff. And there are many Māori that follow you. There are many Māori that wish to see you dead because of, because of a lot of this information. Given that, so a lot of people are watching this and thinking, what are they going on about? The whole reason we're doing this is we feel, given the times we're in, given the laws that are hitting us on a daily basis, given the news that, people have lost their jobs, solicitors are taking cases to court under the New Zealand 1990 Bill of Rights and supposedly winning, but no one's getting anything. Like they're winning, they're supposedly winning, but they're not, are they? Those cases like Yardley and that are not technically winning. Like corrections officers can't go back to work. It's just say Defence Force. Defence Force, they won with the police, but now Defence Force have been told they still have to be, still have to follow the rules.
I just saw an article today that 400 teachers are leaving their jobs. I don't want to turn this into a vaccination thing, but
oh no, not at all. But it's the
400 people are losing their jobs because they've refused to be injected, and they're going to be losing their jobs. And what has been happening is people have been going to the court with ordinary laws, subordinate laws. The 1990 is an ordinary subordinate law, and halfway through the court case, the government is changing the law so that they don't lose in the court, kind of thing. They change it before the case is finished. We've seen with 3 cases, the case has been put in, and then 2 weeks later, after the case has been put in, the law is changed. And then when it comes to the end of the case, on one of the cases, the groundswell case, or the grounds, he wrote 250 pages. And then at the end of it, in one paragraph, he said, However, the law has changed now, so everything that I just wrote is relevant because they've changed the law. Now, one of the law changes because originally it was COVID-19. Here's just one example. Originally it was COVID-19. And when the people went to the court, they changed the law halfway through and they said, no more COVID-19 mandates. They're all going to end. And everybody did a little dance. They said, we won, we won. And then you read at the end of the document and it says, oops, though there's no more COVID-19, there's now Omicron. And they said, you should have a booster for your Omicron. And then the case was finished and then they brought out all this law for Omicron. And they want you to, so this is what we do. So when you go and get this declaration, so that comes under cruel and unusual punishment. Being forced to inject yourself with a substance that you don't want to inject, it comes under cruel and unusual punishments. Now, there's a, Philip has just said to me, there's a huge, Philip Bridge, there's a huge group calling out for the Nuremberg Code and to be brought into New Zealand. But we don't need it. You've got your indubitable non-cruel and unusual punishments that you can put in. And we've already filed that in the court. That's in the court. And we're waiting, that's going to come in the court and we'll talk in another video. But yes, they're just, if you get a declaration, it can't be changed. It's fixed. So that's where we're going to the higher court. We no longer will deal in their subordinate laws because they'll just change them every time. So they're useless.
And that's the whole point of us doing what we're doing of your videos, is to show that unless we do something, unless people start doing something, start waking up, every day you're going to be waking up to new laws. Every single day, and I can attest to that. All you have to do is go into the proposed bills. They're all your coming laws. They're stacking up, and they seem to have put a lot through. And it's from 2020 when we're all busy worried about the fucking flu. So all these laws are coming. So if you are very sensitive to being stressed over these what do you call them, viruses that seem to be coming through, if you're stressed over that, on top of being stressed over possibly losing your job, on top of being stressed over, you're going to be like in this state for a very long time, because this ain't going to stop. And that's why we do what we do, isn't it, Kate? That's why we're looking at all these other.
It is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to be just every day. This is war, and their war is using legal tools where they bombard you every day with a new law, a new law, a new law, and they're not going to stop. They're just going to keep going. They don't even care what the law. No. They just sit there. They've got a whole list of laws that are going to piss you off.
And you can go and find them. We're not talking about stuff that doesn't exist or we've made up. You can go and you can find them if you want. Understandably, many people are very sensitive because they're stressed. There's a lot of stress in this. We're over that. Us three are over all the stress. Yeah, we're like, we got nothing to lose because we know exactly what's coming. And if we can stop this for our kids and our kids' kids, we're going to do, we're willing to give our lives to stop this shit. But if you want to carry on, that's fine. Like, if you don't watch this, don't watch what we're doing, because we're not going to be quiet about this stuff. But if you want to get on board, just go and listen to it. Forearmed is forewarned, and you can sort of.
Right. That's right, isn't it, Sharon? Well, we made it. We put in our court case just maybe only last week, and we had a list of like 10 or 12 things where they were doing with the three waters, the SNAs, the Marsden refinery, the
Firearms.
50% parliament, the Hapua pillar. We had a list of like 11 laws, and we've said, you know, they're just bombarding us every day during the COVID time when people are at their weakest. They're just thrashing. And since we put that in, there have been, now she's made a new law that they're going to put the 8 languages of the Pacific Islands into New Zealand Parliament. Now they've made it, now they're saying that all the teachers have got to be injected, and 400 teachers are going to lose their job now. And there's another one that someone told me is another law that they've made. They're just going to keep going. So we are risking our lives here, and we're prepared to do that. And I think, and so we've got 2 cases in the court now. One of them is calling in the Commonwealth. One of them has asked the Governor General to stop them making these arbitrary laws every single day. We're asking that, we're not asking them to step down, but we're asking for a break, just to stop for a minute and let people catch their breath, because that's not right what they're doing. But included, we also need to ascend to reclaim what Tamati Nene did and what they did from the Kohimaramara conference. That is going to be the way that we can unify our people, because they've been working on dividing us for about 40 years now, 40 to 50 years. They have been dividing our people. And so we see this as a way for us to come together again and do again what they did at the Kohimarama, can't say it well, conference. Are you able to say that?
It's Mission Bay. Basically, it was a conference held at Mission Bay, which is in Kohimarama. Yeah.
All right. And Sharon, what do you want to have a chat about a wee bit, Sharon?
Well, I wanted to have a chat on. I saw two interviews with Dame what's her face, Kiro. One was with Moana Jackson, Willie Jackson's ex, and the other one was Winston Peters. So apparently, Cindy Kiro, according to Moana and herself, she has the power to step down the government. Winston Peters says, no, she doesn't. So which one is right?
I saw that, and she doesn't have the power to step them down without, to just order them to step them down.
No, that's right.
But if we, well, I really don't know what's going to happen, but we have entered the case into the court, and we have asked for a suspension of their lawmaking, and we have given the reasons, and we're sending all of the horrors to the, hang on, I'll get it here.
Well, I don't know which one of those interviews she actually replied to that and said, if there's enough people, she replied to, it's either the one that wasn't with Winston or the one with Moana Jackson, where she said, if enough New Zealand people complain that they want the government out, she can step in. And I thought to myself, well, they've been standing at your gate. They've been going into courts, and they're hearing that you must have already heard that the people have no faith in our governments, all of them, and still you've done nothing.
All right, so I'm going to tell everybody about that. You absolutely cannot knock on the governor's door, or even in a protest, ask the Governor General to stand down. you have to take your 16, because it says in there, the only means for the Governor General to get power is if you take your 1688 and you show them that the Parliament have not been governing according to their oath. And when you look at their oath, you can see the oath, 1688 Bill of Rights. You can see on their oath here. I'll just show you. Now, if you can show in court of law, it tells you down here how they have to govern. And it says it right here, the limitation of the Crown. And it says these are the limits that they have to work within. And it says here that it is for them for the preventing of all questions and all divisions in this realm. So there should never be a question within the realm in regards to these issues. So division, they should not rule by division. And that's what they're doing. When you have a populist policy and you take one lot of money and keep giving it to one group of people over and over again, it causes division and everybody hates the group that's getting the stuff. But the group that's getting the stuff, they're not doing anything wrong because they're just poor themselves. And who doesn't like free stuff? You're going to take it. You're going to. It's human nature. It's just nature. You cannot stop yourself. So you're going to take it, and then everybody's going to hate you for taking it and blame you. That's called ruling by division, populist policies. And another one is the pretended titles of the Crown. That's using United Nations law within New Zealand. That's a pretended title, KII. And another one, it says that this is how they must govern: in unity, peace, tranquility, and safety. And safety is the highest one of them all. Now, when you have to go to the court and you file a declaration, which we have done, and the judge will give you a declaration under your indubitable right in the subject's liberties to be allowed. Now, in our complaint, I'm not going to talk about all of our complaint, but what I can show you is that part of our complaint is that we are saying, part of our complaint is here. And can you see my screen?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Not
Right,
yet.
there you go.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So what we're saying, we have said in our complaint, is that they are not ruling in peace. They're not ruling in unity. They're not ruling in safety. And then you've got to show the court the evidence of that. And we're showing the court, we're looking for pictures for anybody out there, any of these pictures, we're looking for them. If you, we can't help you in filing a case for you, but we're only just filing a case saying that we're asking the Governor General to take control of this Parliament that are not ruling according to the oath. And so we've got evidence here. This is, I've just got this on Facebook. So if it's on Facebook, it's in the public domain and I'm sending it to the court. I'm not using names, but I'm just saying, look at these pictures. Does it look like, are the government governing, are they governing in safety?
Safely.
What's the answer? Are they governing us? Does it look safe to you? Is it looking like they're safe?
No.
Are you feeling very safe? You've got these police with tattoos all up their arms, coming in and dragging you along the street. Here, look at this guy here, pushed down on the ground. This guy here has got a thing being put around his neck. How safe are you feeling there? Are you feeling safe? There, here's another one, shoved down on the ground. 3, 4 officers, they've chosen this morning. Look at this guy here, poor man here, He's got no shirt on. They're dragging him across the ground. I mean, this guy here is probably just a great big lovely teddy bear. I don't think that he, by the size of him, he wouldn't have much energy for chasing the police down the road or doing much to them, would he? I mean, so what caused them to drag him down to the ground like that with no
Didn't
shirt on
matter.
him? I bet he had grazes down his back. And
They were obviously not feeling safe.
they're not feeling safe.
Yeah, I don't think they were feeling safe.
I don't,
So their
Well,
tactical options training obviously went out the window because they weren't feeling safe, all of
Definitely.
them.
and Maxine, do you want to announce what your previous job? I'm not going to announce it, but if you want to, and Maxine knows about this stuff, you can or not if you don't want to.
I got mandated out of corrections, and I was only in there for 3 years, but that's why I made a reference to the tactical options, tactical training, tactical options, ops training. And that's why I'm saying, obviously, those poor policemen were feeling very unsafe because they obviously overreacted in a lot of those situations throughout that protest, because that was not, compared to corrections training of tactical ops, theirs would be similar. And they were obviously, they've overreacted in many of the instances, and I can only say that they weren't obviously feeling safe with all of them,
No.
with all their gear on.
And look, this guy here with the tattoo, he is exactly the same guy that is here taking this man. They're the same. You see his tattoo, you see his tattoo. He's the same guy. Now, if this, after seeing these pictures on social media, if this guy stopped my car or came to my house to arrest me, I'd be scared. I would be very, very, very scared, and I would be running.
Definitely.
And I would get shot for running. But I've seen his tattoos. I've seen what he looks like, and he should be removed from his position immediately, because I feel sorry for any New Zealander that would ever, I better put that in my report, that would ever be confronted with this man coming to their house to arrest them. I'd be scared. I'd be terrified. I don't know about you. But so we are already in the court, and we are able to, and we've called the Governor General and the Supreme Court to take control of this Parliament. And we will see if Winston's correct or not, Sharon. But the only way you can do it is through the 1688 Bill of Rights. And then you have to show the evidence of what your complaints. And we are sending an SOS to the judge, and we are going to continue to file complaints and add it to the case every single day. If you've got any complaints, just send them to me, and we're adding them and we're sending them. We're in the Supreme Court and we're sending them to them on a daily basis. We're in touch with the Crown and we're showing them the evidence. So we'll see what happens there. So yes, thank you for that, Sharon.
Thank you.
Any more? Mary, do you want to have something to say, Mary? Mary!
I'm all good, Kate. I'm all good.
Are you
Having
all
a good
good?
listen.
You're very quiet in there. I couldn't sit and listen to this for 2 hours, but I'm very thankful to you that you have, because we can put this video up and a lot of people are going to learn a lot of stuff from it. So we're grateful that you came, Mary, because it would have been just me and Maxine and Sharon again.
No
I think
worries.
too, I'd like to speak to the history, speaking about the relationship between Māori and the settlers pre the treaty and then after the treaty, just to say that there when in our the three of us, when we're going through the history, what we knew, what we thought we knew, and what we're finding are the
Two different things.
are just
Yeah.
way out the emotions of so on this journey, if you ever want to, if you're thinking of stepping into what we've found is like every allegiance you have to a
It's
religion,
a whole new,
to a
Yeah.
religion, to your tribe, to your race, to your everything that makes up you of all those things. Because I'm telling you now, the missionaries, the missionaries weren't clean like that. They were just like missionaries were
out the gate.
the government, the Maori, what we found, we had to deal with all the emotions of seeing the rawness of humanity, how wrong many were.
Yeah,
It's been a journey, and it's been a tough journey. I mean,
But
one
it
part
really-
there, Kate just cried because she thought
yeah.
she believed she was a New Zealander, and then we read something, and then she just thought, I'm stateless. They took it away. It's
Yeah.
gone. So it's huge, this whole journey. It's not done easily.
And what we found out is that our people worked very well together to prepare a future for their future generations, where they all wanted their children to be safe, and they were prepared to put everything aside, everything aside, so that their children would be safe in their country. And they had to put aside their allegiance to their tribe. They had to put aside their allegiance to their family. They had to put aside their allegiance to their area of land. They had to, all of us had to put aside everything and just think about the future generations and how we could make sure that they would be safe in their country from future invasions. And we all worked together very well in the end. I thought it was really beautiful the way it all ended.
I thought it was too. And for that very fact, that's why Maxine and I are with Kate, is because if there is one thing that my father worked for, was the land we live on. That was his blood, his sweat, his tears. No way will I allow anybody to come and take that away from me and my kids and my muckles. No way. So if it means we have to go back to the Queen, I'm all for that. And my choice. I'm all for that. To the Queen, we'll hold on to her for as long as it takes, because you can guarantee that this is going to come back around again in another 1,000 years. And we need to prepare our kids for that coming. Because if you look at our kids today, none of them have any idea of what's going on. None of them. And then you get the kids who have gone through kohanga and kura kaupapa and all of them. I actually think they've dumbed them down again because they're learning in te reo Māori. If they get caught now from a cop, they wouldn't know how to speak in the court, because they're only mainstream Māori now. They wouldn't know how to defend themselves in a Pākehā court, in a Protestant court. And I'm thinking to myself, if there's anything that education needs to do for our Māori tamariki, is to teach them, first and foremost, English and Māori, not just the one. I mean, I have nothing against our reo. I'm glad I went through what I went through in the Protestant school, because I wouldn't know all of this. I wouldn't know how to protect our kids. And there's a lot of people on Facebook, on Kate's page, Māori PM page, that are saying it was them, Kate and them, the Protestants, not the missionaries, that took away this, took away that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't.
It wasn't. It was our
No.
two brothers that did that.
Yeah.
Our two brothers that did that. But that's why we're fighting with Kate, is for the protections mainly, because you ask any Māori group, that just wants to stay Māori, and hey, kudos to them, but who is their army that's going to protect them against the foreigners that want our land? They want it. Who's their army?
There's
If
only
they haven't already got it.
Yeah, they want it all. They want it all.
Yeah, there's only two protections. One is the forfeiture of person without conviction. That
Yeah.
means your land, and that includes the SNAs. And I don't know why the farmers are not going to get a declaration under forfeiture of person without conviction.
Well, maybe they don't know.
That is one. And the second one is no foreigners will have any governance over your children. I think those are the only two. There's lots of lovely things, but if you can't learn anything from that, those two are the ones that protect your land and protect your children forever. And and the United Nations doesn't have those two things. It doesn't have it.
And the other thing about that is Māori land that are in Māori trust, whānau trust, they're going to be hammered as well, because I've already received a letter from the council that says you have SNA on your area, you can't plant trees, you can't take shipping containers, you can't even build on it. And I'm taking that to court.
Yes.
Everybody is
Yay,
fighting.
Sharon, yeah.
Everybody is fighting for land, money, what the Queen took, all of this. None of you buggers have got an army to fight the foreigners that are going to come in and take it anyway. None of you.
Yeah. None. So
And there's only two instruments you can stand under. That's the United Nations and the Queen. Well, sorry, we're going back to the Queen. I'm going to go back and get my native status back. No bloody way will I stand as a refugee. No way.
Yeah. Not on our own soil.
Exactly.
Yeah, not
So
on our own
that's why
soil.
we're fighting. That's why we are fighting for our natural born rights. We don't care about the money. We care about the land. Our land that our tupunas own.
And our
the
kids.
money will come and go. Money will come and go as it does. But
always.
If you haven't got control of the governance of your country, see, when you have control of the governance of your country, you can do anything you want. You can throw people out. You can let people in. You can throw them off your land. You can make any law that you want. But when the governance of your country is held by foreigners, when you've got a Chinese national, no offense to the Chinese, but this is just for our country, but you've got a Chinese national heading up the serious fraud office, when you've got a
popcorn seller,
a popcorn seller, a Mexican popcorn seller working with the immigration, and you've got a minister of immigration who comes not from New Zealand, from the islands, as the minister. They're not going to govern according to what's good for your country. They're going to govern according to what's good for their country, and they are, and that's what they're doing. So it's not that I'm against them, but you need to have control of your governance first. You have control of the governance, then you have ownership of your land. If you don't have control of your governance, then you don't really have ownership of your land, because whoever's in control is in control of the army, and they're in control of the police. And so they're going to say, like they've done to Sharon, we're going to make our SNA law from the United Nations under the Sustainable Development. And I'll just tell you something. None of the Asian countries are signed up to the United Nations human rights. None of the islands are signed up to the United Nations human rights. None of the Middle Eastern countries are signed up.
Isn't Tonga and Samoa? Isn't Tonga and Samoa? No.
Tonga wrote themselves a special. They wrote themselves a special law that said that there's no such word as human rights in the Tongan language, and therefore they don't understand it. So they have not instituted United Nations human rights into their laws. Samoa comes under America, and America wrote them right when Peter Sharples went there. A couple of months later, America wrote their own special rights for their Indigenous people, their Indians and exempted them from all of the UN. They were taken out, the Tongans were taken out, the Samoans are taken out, and they left you in it. You're the only ones in it. But the reason why New Zealand never wrote a human rights for you, the reason why you've never had one is because you've always come under indubitable right.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of power under that.
Yeah.
So they tricked
What about
you.
that word human? Isn't that fictional?
Yeah, human is
Human.
who
Isn't that the
who is
legal
the
fiction?
Jewish word. Who is the Jewish word? It's the word that they use for, they call the who are the Gentiles, which are the food of the wandering Jews, meaning that we are the slaves and they're food for them, and they will come in to take over our country. Who in Islamic terms means neither male nor female for their Islamic God. So who has meaning?
Yes, Elohim. I was reading that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No gender.
Yeah, no, Jen. In the KGV, in the King James Version, the only one approved by the Queen is the King James Version, and it's the only Bible that doesn't use the word human, not even once. It uses mankind, only mankind, and man, the Son of Man,
Yes.
man.
Yes.
But it doesn't use human. I try not to use it. I sometimes use it, but I try very hard not to. Yeah. But none of them is like, so Egypt and all of Saudi Arabia, and I've got it here, but I haven't had time to do the video, but we must do a video on it. They wrote themselves an Islamic indigenous right, an Islamic one, and all through it they will say, in this law we will try to implement United Nations human rights if it is not repugnant to Islamic Sharia law. And it's all through it, everywhere. Like where it says women will have equal rights in Parliament, they say in this we follow Sharia law, and we will try to implement some of the United Nations if we can, but ultimately Sharia law will be above. They've all got it. New Zealand, Australia, Scotland, England, we're the only ones that are in this hellhole, the only ones. And they have tagged all the world's stateless people onto you under the indigenous rights. Yes, that's why they needed you. They didn't need you because they wanted to give you anything that you didn't already have. They needed you so that they could tag all of the world's stateless people and refugees onto you, so that they could get their rights through you. Yes, because you
just had to come to Auckland to look at that.
Oh, they got
Everywhere.
more coming. They've got more coming. They've got, I think that they're looking at 10 million eventually coming into New Zealand. We're going to be a dumping ground, and then we're going to be under all those religions and their laws.
And then we're going to
Corporations.
and then we're going to have our natives wiped out. Māori will be wiped out because they'll be interbreeding with them.
Yeah, but you shouldn't worry about corporations, because all countries are corporations. Every single country is a corporation.
Yes.
But our 1688 Bill of Rights keeps us in control of our government, and it is the control of our government that controls the corporations. When you have human rights and your indubitable rights are removed through the United Nations, you don't have any control over those corporations.
Yeah.
But every single country is run as a corporation. The Queen runs as a corporation. Families, even families, some families that have got big families are run as corporations. Your trusts are run as
Iwis.
corporations.
The
Eh?
iwis.
Yeah. Iwi.
They
Yeah.
all are.
All corporations now. Every iwi.
Yeah, I
You,
don't.
you all, always were, but you always were. But you were incorporated in 1888 by Sydney
Yes,
Davis.
yes, we all were.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
all were, but you were incorporated in one.
Everything and anything.
Yeah.
Everything isn't, because you need to have a constitution, you need to
Yeah.
have voting rights, you need to have everybody gets a say. All of that are things that have to be, you can't just set up a corporation. There, you have to set all the rules. And so everything
Pardon me.
should
Oh.
and has to be up. But your rights in your indubitable rights are and the governance of your country give you the power to control those corporations. And when you have that power taken away from you, then you have no control of those corporations. And that's why you're in the mess that you're in, because you've lost your indubitable right through the United Nations. That's why. So
That was good.
I think that was good. Are we done with that? I think I'm going to stop the record. Smile, because it comes up. You smile, then the picture. So put on your best. Hang on, I put my thing ready for my smile. Can you see, Nene?
Oh, I'm not an actor.
Where's my? Oh, come on. You go. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Hurry up.